I decided to call this exhibition Springflare, simply because it is the end of the winter, which is a long season in this part of the world certainly, and also where I grew up in Canada. And flare to mimic the sound of flower, but also a kind of fire. In this sense, my colors are usually quite bold in most of my works. These are somewhat toned down from earlier works where I used a lot of fluorescent pinks and yellows and greens. So they're still quite vibrant, but I just thought of that explosion of color that occurs during springtime. I see it happening already. In fact, I took a walk down to your botanical gardens this morning and everything is sort of on the verge of exploding into color and life, which is a wonderful way to be welcome to Copenhagen. And I also thought of spring as a very short period in the year when it sort of represents potential more than anything, and it's very short-lived, where things are just have been dormant or asleep for many months and are just sort of on the verge of becoming something else. So it comes with a kind of promise that perhaps there will be a change at this time. And in past years, I've started focusing more and more on climate emergency, climate change, and what does that mean for us as a species? What does that mean for our planet? And although I don't sort of bonk my viewers on the head directly with a kind of book or with science, I like to keep the paintings open-ended and that viewers can experience their own personal associations with them. And I think that really is what art is good at doing, at sort of opening a question, opening a keyhole, and inviting viewers to fill in, the picture plane or their experience with their own worlds and their own explanations and their own feelings. You asked me earlier about what do I think makes good art, and I think really anything that isn't propaganda, first of all, but is very open and limitless that way, and sort of insinuates itself in the back of your mind and grows there, and you may forget about a painting or a sculpture or a video art, something you had seen weeks or months before, but suddenly it resurfaces and starts to, unravel itself in your imagination or in some part of your body. And I think that's a wonderful thing that art can do, and other art forms, music certainly. This painting is simply called Dune Bunnies. I just imagined an open expanse with beautiful blue sky, and then my kind of signature oval clouds that are heavily patterned, and then this very odd and rich expanse of vegetation. And at first one doesn't notice the human figure. It's almost secondary or hardly important at all, because I feel like the shadows become more material than the vegetation or the animals themselves. Kind of a reshuffling of priorities, if you will. So I'll just point her out. Here she is here, but she's sort of shielding, this character is sort of shielding her eyes from this very intense light, and she's got a kind of acid yellow rabbit on her chest that she's cradling, and there are more. There's one there, and it's kind of a game that I play when I'm painting as well, that I'll have a motif or a leitmotif where the shapes of objects or plants or animals even echo themselves or perpetuate themselves in the shapes of their surroundings. So it's I think so your eyes can play tricks on you, and so it draws me in when I'm doing it. I don't know what effect it has on the viewer, but I certainly have a lot of fun making these paintings. I'm often asked why do my human figures, if they make it an appearance at all, why bother painting them if I go through such lengths to camouflage them or make them almost irrelevant? And I feel like I do that because I don't know, maybe the human spirit is morphing or mutating into something else. Maybe it's just wishful thinking, but I just hope that we would learn to truly love the planet that we live on, and that it has been here for much longer than we have. We've been here for a blink of an eye, essentially, while everything else has been evolving for millions and millions of years. I find that my human figures, whether there's a painting, but they're just sort of stony men, that they look sort of like marble or stone, but they're not immediately apparent, and they're just kind of trekking up this hillside that's shaped oddly, like the trees are sort of bent and leaning into one another. They sort of this triangular shape or apex that frames them and their activities. And sometimes, for instance, a tree is casting a shadow, or perhaps it's a shadow that is spilling out behind it, but it is definitely anthropomorphic. It has a head, arms and legs, and but there is no sort of fleshy being attached to this thing. So where is it emanating from? Where is it coming from? And why is it there? Maybe we ourselves will just become shadows or echoes eventually. I think we're kind of on a slippery descent in that direction, but who knows? Perhaps technology will save us, although I wouldn't put much stock in that. One doesn't know. So in many of the paintings I do employ a kind of patterning that almost looks like tapestry. Pretty heavy on the mark making, and again that's just sort of me partially. I'm confessing that's me sort of entertaining myself whilst I make these paintings. It's very difficult for me to, I don't know, make the same thing twice, so I'm kind of what you would call a restless painter. But I also like the surface. I mean, painting is 2D after all, it's two-dimensional. It isn't a sculpture, it isn't a video, it isn't an animation, it doesn't move. So how can I animate the surface of the painting, the canvas? And one of the ways I do that is by mark making. So all these sort of frantic marks and lines and dots and globs and zigzags and sort of something that looks like it's a serrated edge or something that's scraped across it. But I want it to pulse with life, essentially. I want it to vibrate. In all of these paintings, there's a kind of equalization, no, that's not the right word, a kind of leveling or an equaling of the playing field. I try, just by using a lot of detailing, that whether something is a celestial body like the sun or the moon or a honeybee, they all have an equal value. There's no hierarchy in any of these paintings.